A 23-year-old Laurentian University music student who wanted to become a teacher, Sweeney was stabbed to death by a male just before the lunch hour on a weekday, the killing occurring in the adult video store where she was working. The store was located in a strip mall on, arguably, one of the busiest streets in Greater Sudbury, Paris Street. The man accused of murdering Sweeney, Robert Stephen Wright, will have his long-awaited Superior Court judge and jury trial, just over 4 years from the date of his arrest in North Bay in mid-December of 2018, and just over 25 years from when Sweeney was murdered. The trial has been booked to last 5 weeks. For Kim Sweeney, Renee's sister, the trial cannot come soon enough. "There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff people don't realize," she said in an interview with the Sudbury Star 2 years ago. "It's not something cut and dry, an arrest is made and the trial is held. It's a long waiting game. The frustration of the length of time waiting to get to trial really weighs down on you." Kim said she understands a process must be followed as an accused heads to trial, but in this case, it has taken too long. "The support of the community is really important," she said. "There's really nobody left in my family. I am relying on the community to help me get through this." Kim's mother and stepfather are both deceased and Renee was her only sibling. The younger sister said that when Renee was murdered, she did not feel safe in the years that followed, worrying that Renee's killer would also go after her. Kim said that when she learned about how her sister died, it shocked her and continues to upset her to this day. "What happened on that day, it wasn't necessary," she said. "It didn't need to go down that way. That was my sister, my mom's daughter. She had friends. She was a good student. She was a good person. My kids don't have an aunt to take them for ice cream and spoil them. I don't have any nieces and nephews to spoil." Veteran local criminal lawyer William Beach, who has been practicing law for 51 years, said so-called the Jordan ruling is in the background of every case. Beach said that while the lengthy period of time it took to get to the actual trial for Wright could favor the Crown's case, Jordan is always a major consideration. Jordan refers to a ruling in 2016 by the Supreme Court of Canada that an accused should expect to have his or her trial within a reasonable period of time, 18 months, between the charges and the trial in a provincial court without a preliminary inquiry, or 30 months in other cases. The ruling concerned the case of Barrett Richard Jordan, who was arrested and charged in December 2008 in a drug case. Jordan went to trial in 2013, bringing the time between the charges and the conclusion of the trial to 49.5 months, or almost 5 years. With the Wright case, though, there were 2 defense teams involved in 4 attempts made for bail. There was also a change of venue hearing. As well, the COVID-19 pandemic essential shut down Ontario courts essentially shut down from February to the summer of 2020. Retired local lawyer Hervé Sauve, who spent 23 years in the Sudbury Crown Attorney's office, including 18 as Crown Attorney, said he might just attend the trial to get a glimpse of Wright just to see how he looks. Sauve said that with a case that is 25 years old, memories can fade, but, he added, when a person witnesses something unique such as a murder scene, that image never goes away. "He's there, Sweeney's killer, as you are entering the story where she worked and you are seeing him go out, and you go in and there's been a murder," he said. "Your memory is good as to what you saw." Sauve said DNA testing today is far more advanced than when he was a prosecutor. "I don't know what type of DNA evidence they police investigators have, but today, it's very different than in my day," he explained. "If there was blood, you couldn't say whose it was." Sauve, who also spent time in private practice as a criminal lawyer, said the defense team in the case will have to push witnesses who reportedly saw Wright and highlight any uncertainty about what they saw. "He had curly hair, but in fact at the time, it was a different type of haircut," said the veteran lawyer. "You stress something that's different from witness remarks. To better understand the Sweeney murder case, it is helpful to go back and review the events around the time of the murder and then what happened with Wright following his arrest. While there is a publication ban in place covering Wright's court appearances, there is information out in the public realm that dates back to the time of the murder. Sweeney was stabbed to death while working alone at the adults-only video store on Paris Street. 2 friends, dropping by to visit, found her at about 11:30 a.m. January 17, 1998. A suspect, who was still there, ran past the pair and out the door. He was also seen running on a sidewalk by a woman. Not long after the murder, Sudbury Regional Police, now Greater Sudbury Police, announced they had their man, John Federley, 31. Several days later, Fetterly is released and his murder charge gone. The search for Sweeney's killer resumes. In a broad appeal to the public, police issue 2 posters, the first featuring a turquoise-colored High Sierra spring/fall jacket with dark blue collar with what appears to be bloodstains on many sections. The jacket, found with a diaper or safety pin inside the left breast section, was sold exclusively at Mervyn's department store in the United States in 1994 or 1995. Also highlighted on the poster are a predominantly black with white trim and laces Brooks running shoe, approximate size 8 to 10, a universally sized white cotton glove, and the diaper pin. A male suspect is described as being tall, thin, white, in his early 20s, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, with short dark hair, and wearing glasses. The poster offers up to a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for Sweeney's murder. The second poster was an artist's conception of the face of the killer, a young, clean-shaven male wearing glasses and with short hair. Police later asked hundreds of men in the city identified as suspects to voluntarily provide a blood sample so they can be ruled out in the investigation. Civil liberties concerns are raised about what will happen to the sample results after testing. No one is charged and the case goes cold from that point. In early 2017, Greater Sudbury Police released a new composite sketch compiled by Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA technology company in the United States, using its snapshot DNA phenotyping technology, which attempts to predict appearance and ancestry from DNA samples. The composite sketch features a male of Northern European heritage with fair skin, blue/green eyes, brown/blonde hair, and some freckles. No arrest results. Then, out of the blue, more than 20 years later after the killing, there is a surprise breakthrough. Former Greater Sudbury resident Robert Stephen Wright, now living and working in North Bay, is arrested December 11, 2018, and charged with first-degree murder. Wright was 18 and a student at Lockerbie Composite School at the time of Sweeney's murder. He was working as a laboratory technician at North Bay Regional Hospital when police arrested him. Burke Keeney, then Wright's lawyer, issued a brief statement, stressing the allegation against his client remains to be proven. Wright is denied bail in 2019, 2020, and 2022. Wright filed a bail review application. Regional Justice Patrick Boucher, on January 17, 2022, ruled, "I do not have jurisdiction to conduct a bail hearing de novo," a legal term meaning from the new, concerning the hearing held on December 17, 2021. The application is denied. The Sudbury Crown Attorney's Office applies to the province's Attorney General for a direct indictment against Wright, which would send him directly to trial, skipping a preliminary hearing. The AG granted the direct indictment in August 2019, but on the lesser charge of second-degree murder, implying the killing was not planned. At the same time, the Crown lost its application to have the defense team of Keeney and Michael Venturi removed as Wright's counsel due to a conflict of interest. Superior Court Justice John Frejo dismissed the application in February 2020. On July 20 to 21, 2020, Keeney and Venturi seek a change of venue for Wright's trial. It fails. "I am confident that an impartial jury can be chosen anywhere in the Northeast region using these tools in this case," Superior Court Justice Gregory Ellis ruled. Keeney announced he is stepping down as Wright's lawyer at a pretrial motions meeting October 12, 2021. In a statement, Keeney said that for the purpose of clarity and accuracy, "I declared a conflict and all parties agreed that it would be proper for me to step aside as lead counsel." Michael Lacey, a well-known criminal lawyer from Toronto, and no stranger to the Sudbury courthouse, takes over. Lacey said he will need time to get up to speed. As a result, the trial, which had been set to start October 25, 2021, is delayed. It is rescheduled to September 12, 2022, but later pushed back again. In mid-February of this year, Lacey wins the right to seek leave to appeal to the Ontario Court of Appeal concerning Justices Boucher ruling. However, a 3-judge panel ruled against the appeal in March. If the panel had agreed with Lacey's arguments, Wright would have been released on bail prior to his trial. The judge and jury trial for Wright is set to get underway at the Sudbury Courthouse in February. If convicted of second-degree murder, Wright, now 43, will receive an automatic life sentence. The only issue to be decided at that point is his parole eligibility. If convicted of manslaughter, he would receive a fixed-time sentence. Since Wright has been in custody for more than 4 years, he will receive 6+ years of pretrial custody credit, which will reduce his parole eligibility waiting period if he receives a life sentence. In the case of a manslaughter conviction, the pretrial custody credit would cut a major chunk of time out of his prison sentence. Wright also came down with COVID-19 while in custody and spent time recovering in a Toronto hospital. The Sudbury jail, where he had been staying, was temporarily closed due to a COVID-19 outbreak in the fall of 2021. Inmates were relocated to other correctional facilities across Ontario. If Wright is convicted, expect his contracting COVID-19 and the long period he spent in custody during the pandemic to come up in sentencing and for Lacey to seek additional pretrial custody credit. U.S. Army PFC Amanda Gonzalez, 19, was looking forward to sharing her life and love with her daughter, who would have been born on March 26, 2002, according to a reward flyer. A Florida man has been arrested and charged in connection to the murder of a pregnant soldier at a former U.S. Army base in Germany 21 years ago, according to the Department of Justice. On Tuesday, Shannon L. Wilkerson, 42, was arrested in the Northern District of Florida in connection with the murder of U.S. Army PFC Amanda Gonzalez, 19, the Department of Justice said in a statement. Wilkerson is charged with one count of first-degree murder in Gonzalez's November 3, 2001, slaying at Fliegerhorst Kaserne, a U.S. Army base in Hanau, Germany. Wilkerson was a member of the armed forces at the time of the slaying but was later discharged from the Army, according to the DOJ statement. He was discharged from active duty in 2004 and from the Army Reserve in 2007, according to a grand jury indictment, Stars and Stripes reports. Gonzalez was 19 years old and 4 months pregnant when she was killed, the FBI said in a previous release. She was on her first assignment in the Army and was assigned to Headquarters Supply Company, 127th Aviation Support Battalion as a cook at the time of her death, according to a 2008 statement from the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command. Her body was found on the floor of her third-floor barracks room on November 5, 2001, when she failed to show up for work. The death was ruled a homicide by asphyxiation, CID said in the statement. Gonzalez had only been in Germany for 8 months when she was killed, the U.S. Army CID said. In 2008, CID wrote in the statement that it was offering a $100,000 reward to anyone with information leading to the apprehension and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her death. Increasing the reward to $100,000 is a testament to the determination we have in solving this case and bringing the person or persons responsible to justice, CID spokesman Chris Gray said in 2008. The reward was increased to $125,000 in 2011. We are confident that someone out there knows something about the untimely death of this soldier and her unborn child, and we are not giving up. We strongly encourage anyone with information to contact us immediately. Gonzalez was an inspiration to her friends and family and loved by many, a 2001 flyer offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of her murder said, Stars and Stripes reported. At the time of her murder, Amanda was pregnant and looking forward to sharing her life and love with her daughter, who would have been born on March 26, 2002, it said. Her father told Stars and Stripes in 2008 that he had spent years hoping for answers in her case. It's frustrating as hell, Santos Gonzalez told Stars and Stripes in 2008. That was my first daughter, my only daughter. I know she had been in a struggle, he said. I want some answers and maybe get a little closure. For Gonzalez's mother, Gloria Bates, the pain of her loss is immeasurable. They took away my daughter and first grandchild, Bates told Stars and Stripes in 2008. But I've actually forgiven whoever killed her daughter. I've found it in my heart. Wilkerson pleaded not guilty at a hearing Thursday, according to a court filing, Stars and Stripes reports. If convicted, Wilkerson faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. He is charged under the Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act, which gives the U.S. federal courts jurisdiction over crimes committed outside of the U.S. by, among others, former members of the armed forces who are no longer subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the DOJ statement said. The FBI is investigating the case. It is unclear whether Wilkerson has retained an attorney who can speak on his behalf. The Lancaster County District Attorney's Office and Pennsylvania State Police have filed charges in connection to the 1984 murder of 25-year-old Marianne Baconstows in Pequea Township. The Pennsylvania State Police say they have charged 67-year-old Jerry Bagenstoes, Marianne's estranged husband, of the 100 block of West Willow Road with one count of criminal homicide. Authorities say he is currently being held at the Lancaster County Prison without bail. An arrest in this 38-year-old case has certainly been long awaited, Lancaster County District Attorney Heather Adams said. This is not a case solved with DNA. Rather, the arrest of Jerry Bagenstoes is the result of decades of hard work and dedication by law enforcement personnel, beginning in 1984 with members of the Pequea Township Police Department and continuing with numerous criminal investigators in the Pennsylvania State Police leading up to the present day. It was their dedication to the pursuit of justice in this case and their willingness to devote resources to this investigation, combined with the review and analysis of the decades-long investigation and evidence compiled in this investigation by attorneys in my office that culminated in and led to this arrest today. Marianne Bagenstoes disappeared from her home on West Willow Road on June 5, 1984. Authorities say in June 1984, 25-year-old Marianne Bagenstoes was separated from her estranged husband, Jerry, and resided at the West Willow Road home with her 2-year-old son, who was shared with Jerry, and a boarder with whom she had a relationship. In April of that year, Marianne was granted custody of her son. However, a formal custody hearing was upcoming and scheduled for June 15 of that year, according to authorities. Marianne was described as a devoted mother to her son, who people say would have never been left behind. Marianne did not appear at the custody hearing and Jerry was awarded custody of their son, police say. Jerry was the last person to see Marianne alive, according to authorities. Police say one of Marianne's family or friends have been contacted by her since the day of her disappearance. The investigation into the disappearance of Marianne began on June 7, 1984, when authorities were contacted by Marianne's mother who learned that her daughter had not returned home for 2 days. Jerry never reported the mother of his child missing, according to authorities. Police say they spoke to Jerry on multiple occasions, who told them that he last saw Marianne alive on June 5, 1984, when he arrived at the house that morning to take Marianne to trade in her car. Jerry relayed that he took his son to Long's Park because Marianne was not ready to go. He claimed that when he returned home, Marianne was not there and had left a note that she had walked to the Turkey Hill and Willow Street and that he had not heard from her since. On June 8, 1984, a Pequea Township police officer spoke with Jerry at the West Willow Road address. The officer observed a piece of cardboard covering freshly dug dirt during a check of the garage. He lifted the cardboard and observed a digging area that measured approximately 3 feet by 5 feet. A search warrant was executed on June 13, 1984, based on these observations. The hole in the garage was reopened and measured 3 feet by 6 feet and was approximately 5 feet deep. The body of Marianne was not located, authorities say. However, investigators discovered a note when conducting the search warrant on June 13, 1984. The note was found crumbled in a wooden nail keg in the living room beside the couch and stated, "Had to run a quick errand, be right back." It was seized and retained as evidence at PSP Lancaster. Police say additional evidence gathered and relied on over the course of the investigation and cited in the affidavit of probable cause includes the following. Records obtained from Jerry's place of employment indicated that he had an unexcused absence for June 5, 1984, the date of Marianne's disappearance. Jerry had an unexplained injury to his left arm which was covered by a bandage. He provided inconsistent statements to law enforcement on how and where he injured himself. Jerry provided multiple inconsistent statements to police on what the note left by Marianne said, why he would have dug a hole in his garage mere days after the victim's disappearance, why he was present at the house that day, and what Marianne was doing when he arrived. The defendant stated that Marianne was having car trouble and walked to a store. Interviews with the victim's neighbors and acquaintances revealed the car was working fine in the days leading up to the victim's disappearance. An assistant manager at Turkey Hill stated she had not seen Marianne at the store on the day of her disappearance. Jerry told officers during the search warrant that the note did not say she was walking to Turkey Hill and that he only assumed that Marianne went to the Turkey Hill. A maintenance supervisor at Long's Park related he had not seen the defendant's vehicle in the park on June 5, 1984, after being provided a picture of the vehicle. 2 additional employees also had not seen the vehicle. In 1985, Jerry told investigators that people had relayed to him they recently saw Marianne. The defendant allegedly never reported this information to police.
Multiple notes and postcards sent to Jerry purportedly from Marianne were never relayed to the police by the defendant, authorities say.
In late 2018, investigators with the Pennsylvania State Police began reworking this investigation, focusing on a note that was seized during the June 13, 1984 search warrant at the West Willow Road residence. Investigators searched online databases to obtain public records and other documents containing the writing of the defendant.
This initial gathering of data led to the execution of a search warrant at the same residence on September 20, 2022. Troopers seized numerous items that allegedly contained the handwriting of the suspect. The handwriting samples collected by investigators were submitted to the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Forensic Services, Harrisburg Regional Laboratory for Forensic Analysis. The analysis compared handwriting contained on a note recovered by police on June 13, 1984, purportedly explaining her whereabouts, to the items seized on September 20, 2022. The findings in the report stated the note recovered by police in 1984 was written by Jerry Baconstows, authorities say. Officials say the body of Marianne has never been recovered in this decades-long investigation. Investigators cite the following factors to establish that this is not a missing persons case. None of the victim's associates or family have been contacted by her since her disappearance. Multiple checks of police, federal, and open-source databases have not been able to locate the victim. No evidence has been discovered that the victim packed belongings for a trip or to leave home. The victim has not opened any bank accounts or claimed income. There has been no activity on the victim's credit or social security number. The victim has not been discovered to have established residency or legal identification in other states or ever held a passport/left the United States. Carol DeLeon's body was found in June 1981. More than 4 decades later, Larry Allen West has been charged with her murder. A San Antonio man has been arrested in connection with a murder case that has remained unsolved for more than 4 decades. Larry Allen West has been arrested and charged with the murder of Carol Joyce DeLeon, according to an arrest warrant. "We've been suffering for over 40 years not knowing what happened to my sister," said Carol's sister, Sandra DeLeon. "The potential of what she could have been will never be known. We were robbed of that, she was robbed of that." DeLeon was last seen on June 3, 1981, at a nightclub in San Antonio. Investigators said she had just graduated from Thomas Edison High School a few days before she died. The next day, a body was found on the grassy shoulder of Interstate 35 North near a rest area south of New Braunfels in Comal County. At the time, Texas DPS said that investigators tried to identify the body from fingerprints and missing person reports in the area but weren't able to identify her. She was buried in New Braunfels as a Jane Doe. She wasn't identified as DeLeon until 2009, according to Texas DPS. DeLeon had been shot 6 times in the head, according to an arrest warrant. An autopsy showed bruising on her neck, leading investigators to believe the suspect was forcibly holding or restraining the victim's neck. Although some of her clothes had been removed, investigators said there was no indication that DeLeon had been sexually assaulted. During the autopsy, fingernail scrapings were collected, and in 2010, 29 years after DeLeon's body was discovered, a DNA profile was created from the scrapings. However, after entering the DNA profile into the CODIS system, investigators couldn't find a match. In 2019, 38 years after the murder, another sample of DNA was collected from DeLeon's body and matched the DNA collected from the fingernail scrapings. After that, the DNA was submitted for genealogy testing, which identified 3 persons of interest, including Larry Allen West. In November 2021, Texas Rangers visited West at his workplace in Converse, and he voluntarily gave investigators a swab of his DNA, according to an arrest warrant. According to police documents, West told investigators that in 1981, he often went to bars in Behar County to pick up younger women. He denied he had anything to do with DeLeon's murder. Then last month, Texas Ranger investigators said they got a break in the case. They received the DNA analysis report pointing to West as the best match, and the probability that the DNA found on DeLeon's body could be from someone else was nearly impossible. According to the arrest warrant, investigators said Larry Allen West could not be excluded as the foreign contributor of this DNA profile.
The probability of selecting an unrelated person at random who could be the contributor of this foreign DNA profile is approximately 1 in 422.1 quintillion. To know that she fought such a violent death at the end, she fought so hard for her life, it's just heartbreaking, Sandra said. Investigators also interviewed West's ex-wives, who described West as a violent person. According to an arrest warrant, West's first wife told investigators she was only married to West for 30 days, and during that time, he repeatedly assaulted and raped her. Sandra said her faith in God is what keeps her going every day as she's spent the past 40 years advocating for answers surrounding her sister's murder. She's hoping for closure at last. This is his chance before he leaves this earth to make his peace. Come forth, give the rest of the family peace, Sandra said. I know that justice is going to come in one form or another. According to online court records, West was arrested Thursday. His bond was set at $125,000. In April, West posted bond and has been released from jail. West will be back in court for a pre-trial hearing. In March of this year, the man who stands accused of murdering his biological daughter, Amore Wiggins, in the decade-old Opelika Baby Jane Doe case, reportedly made a shocking confession. He allegedly admitted to the killing during a videotaped police interview after waiving his Miranda rights. Lamar Vickerstaff faces felony murder charges, while his wife Ruth Vickerstaff, who is not Amore's biological mother, is charged with failing to report a missing child. The preliminary hearings for both defendants happened Wednesday. A judge did determine there is sufficient probable cause to proceed to a grand jury. Opelika Police Detective Alfred White took the stand for prosecutors and testified Lamar Vickerstaff admitted to killing Amore, but claimed he did not abuse her before her death. Detective White said some of Vickerstaff's statements were creditable, but detectives questioned other details he shared. He repeatedly said he did it, and he wanted his wife not to be charged, and that is what he was seeking in some sort of deal he wanted to make. He advised he traveled with her, Amore, from Virginia to Alabama, and he stated once he made it to Alabama, he drove around. He recalled placing her, Amore, where she was ultimately found. He did not give details as to how he did it, but he advised he did attempt to resuscitate her, Detective White testified. Detective White says when he asked Lamar how he killed Amore, he denied causing the injuries up to her death, but said when he returned from deployment is when he had to get rid of his daughter. During Detective White's testimony, we also learned Virginia Child Protective Services was called to investigate an anonymous report of abuse and injuries to Amore when she was in the care of Ruth. According to Detective White, Ruth admitted CPS had been called, but she claims CPS said everything was fine. Detective White testified Opelika police are trying to get a hold of the CPS records in Virginia. However, the records cannot be found by CPS workers in Virginia at this time. Detective White testified although Ruth initially denied knowing Lamar had a daughter, she later admitted to knowing Amore existed. Detective White said Ruth claims the last time she saw Amore her father was taking her to his relatives in Alabama, and Ruth never thought about asking about Amore again. Lamar Vickerstaff is currently being held at the Lee County Detention Facility without bail. Ruth Vickerstaff was released on a $10,000 and can now travel to Jacksonville, Florida with an ankle monitor per the judge's order on Wednesday. Lee County prosecutors had asked the judge not to allow Ruth to leave Alabama, claiming they received an anonymous phone call saying Ruth had already been traveling back to Florida even though the judge had ordered her to stay in Alabama. Meanwhile, according to court documents, a witness statement puts Lamar Vickerstaff in Opelika during the estimated time of Amore Wiggins' death, between 2010 and 2011. Additionally, we learned Vickerstaff has ties to the exact area where her remains were recovered and how he went AWOL from the Navy before a scheduled meeting with Opelika police in Florida. Vickerstaff's AWOL from the Navy is one reason why the judge decided to deny Lamar Vickerstaff's defense attorney's request for bond under Onia's law. On January 28, 2012, Opelika police responded to Brookhaven Trailer Park, located at 1775 Hurst Street in Opelika, Alabama, about skeletal remains being found. A skull was located in the yard of a residence while the majority of the bones were located only a few feet into the wood line behind a trailer and the adjacent lot. During the search of the area, a pink child's shirt and a small bundle of curly hair were also recovered. The remains were sent to the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, where a medical examination was performed.
The report stated that the remains were of a black female likely between 4 to 7 years of age who became affectionately known to the community as Baby Jane Doe. An autopsy was performed and notated fractures to her skull, arms, legs, shoulders, and ribs, totaling more than 15 individual fractures that were attributed to blunt force trauma. Opelika's Baby Jane Doe case is as complicated as it is tragic. The following timeline of events explains what we've learned so far and how Amore Wiggins was identified, and her dad and his wife arrested. January 1, 2006, Amore Wiggins born in Virginia to mother Ms. Sherry Wiggins. 2009, Amore's father, Lamar Vickerstaff, and wife Ruth obtained legal, physical custody. 2009 to 2022, Sherry Wiggins pays child support to Vickerstaff for Amore. Visitations suddenly stop and Wiggins goes to court trying to regain custody of Amore. January 28, 2012, Opelika Baby Jane Doe case born. Tiny skull remains found at Brookhaven Trailer Park in Opelika, Alabama. 2012, remains sent to FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia for examination. Remains are black females between 4 to 7 years of age. Autopsy reveals more than 15 fractures attributed to blunt force trauma, evidence of healing and malnourishment. Death determined a homicide, believed to have occurred between the summer of 2010 to 2011. 2012 to 2022, police review 15,000 case files and investigate thousands of tips. 2016, pics surface of girl taken at Opelika's Greater Peace Baptist Church Bible School around 2011. Police believe girl may be Baby Jane Doe. January 2022, DNA extracted from remains for genealogy testing. October 2022, Jane Doe's father, Lamar Vickerstaff Jr., identified. Vickerstaff was born and raised in Opelika, Alabama. Police say he had family, friends who lived near remains location. During U.S. Navy career, he resided in Norfolk, Virginia, Honolulu, Hawaii, and Jacksonville, Florida. December 2022, Opelika detectives notify Vickerstaff Jr. of his daughter's death and interview him and wife Ruth Vickerstaff. Couple does not provide information on identity of Jane Doe. December 2022, Amore Wiggins identified as Baby Jane Doe. Detectives meet with Sherry Wiggins, DNA confirms she is biological mother. Wiggins provides docs showing Lamar and Ruth Vickerstaff obtained legal and physical custody in 2009. December 2022, detectives reach out to school boards, pediatric clinics in several states and determine Amore was never enrolled in school nor reported as missing. January 1, 2023, Amore Wiggins would have celebrated her 17th birthday. January 17, 2023, Lamar and Ruth Vickerstaff arrested in Jacksonville, Florida. Lamar charged with felony murder. Ruth arrested for failure to report a missing child under Kaylee's law. The Opelika community was left reeling on January 28, 2012, when tiny skeletal remains were discovered at the Brookhaven Trailer Park off Hurst Street. The remains were determined to be a young black female between the ages of 4 and 7. An autopsy revealed more than 15 fractures attributed to blunt force trauma, evidence of healing and malnourishment. The child's death was determined to be a homicide, believed to have occurred between the summer of 2010 and 2011. For the next decade, the Opelika Police Department dedicated themselves to uncovering the truth, returning a name to the little girl, and justice for those who had killed her. Opelika police attempted to develop a DNA profile for Jane Doe, however, but were unsuccessful due to the condition of the remains. Fortunately, with advancements, in January of 2022, DNA was further extracted for genealogy testing. Othram Labs successfully extracted DNA from the scalp and Astrea Labs from the hair. A comprehensive genealogical profile was built. Once uploaded, an experienced genealogist used the profile to identify Baby Jane Doe's relatives and investigative leads. Eight years after Conrad Roy sat in his truck and took his own life after being goaded into suicide by girlfriend Michelle Carter, the 18-year-old's parents say they are still haunted and are doing all they can to make sure no other family suffers as they have. Conrad Henri Roy was born in the Massachusetts town of Mattapoisett in 1995. As a child and teen, he struggled with social anxiety and depression. He worked with his father, grandfather and uncle at his family's maritime salvage company, Tucker Roy Marine Towing and Salvage Incorporated, while attending high school.
In 2014, he earned his captain's license from the Northeast Maritime Institute, along with graduating from Old Rochester Regional High School with a 3.88 GPA. He was a standout student and athlete, landing himself on the honor roll and competing in baseball, rowing crew, and track and field events. After graduating from high school, Roy was admitted to Fitchburg State University, but he elected not to pursue his degree in business at the time. Roy met Carter before graduation. The pair reportedly met for the first time in Florida in 2012 when they both happened to be in the state on family vacations. They discovered that they lived less than an hour apart from each other in Massachusetts. From there, Roy and Carter struck up a romantic relationship and dated for 2 years. Although they were both from neighboring suburbs in Massachusetts, they only saw each other in person a handful of times after their plans to meet up kept falling through. However, the pair had an intense relationship that they kept alive over texts, as they exchanged thousands of messages on serious topics ranging from Carter's experience with eating disorders to Roy's struggles with depression. Before his death, Conrad Roy recorded several video diaries in which he discusses his struggle for normalcy. The recordings were discovered after his death in 2014, and each one reveals his ruthless battle with self-examination and insecurity. Sadly, Conrad took his own life before anyone could tell what was going on. One night he headed out in his parents' truck and he never came home. A search ensued until authorities found his parents' truck in an empty parking lot. As you could imagine, Conrad's death hit his family very hard. Soon after his death, a young woman by the name of Michelle Carter reached out to his family. She claimed to have had a deep relationship with Conrad before his passing. She would eventually develop a relationship between Conrad's sisters and mother and father. She even put together a suicide prevention fundraiser in the name of Conrad. But little did the family know Michelle was keeping a dark secret. The night of Conrad's passing, Michelle was actually engaged in a text conversation with him, and upon going through Conrad's text, investigators would soon put together the twisted truth. Michelle Carter's text actually played a heavy part in Conrad's decision to take his own life that night. Not only did she try very hard to convince Conrad to take his own life, but during that time she was actually texting her friends things like, "Oh, Conrad's missing, they're looking for him right now." At that point, Conrad hadn't even left his house yet. While investigators had access to Conrad's texts, they ran into one problem. They weren't able to prove that the phone was actually being used by Michelle and not her mom. Because the phone was registered to her mom, they couldn't prove in court that she was actually the one sending the texts. Although Michelle would become very close to Conrad's family, her phony friendliness would be short-lived because it was actually at this fundraiser where investigators were able to prove once and for all that the phone belonged to Michelle. What they did was they called her phone and they watched and recorded her picking it up. And what they found would only add to the sickening truth of the death of Conrad Roy. When they confiscated Michelle's phone, they were able to read and see thousands of text messages between the two. Her relationship with Conrad grew from an innocent teen love into a twisted and manipulating back and forth. Once the full length of Michelle's involvement with Conrad's death became clear, they broke it to Conrad's family. The young lady who had befriended them after Conrad's death was not the kind and innocent friend they once believed she was. Massive thread of texts revealed that Michelle went from trying to convince Conrad that his life was worth living to basically saying, "Screw it, kill yourself." She told Conrad things like, "You always say you're going to, but you never follow through." She basically bullied him into feeling guilty about not taking his own life, and sadly that continued until the fateful night of Conrad's death. The night of Conrad's death, he was in communication with Michelle through text and phone call. When the case went to court, Michelle was convicted basically for one reason. Conrad took his own life by poisoning himself with carbon monoxide. While he was doing this, he was both talking to Michelle on the phone and texting her. There was a point where Conrad got out of the truck scared and hopeless, probably looking for his long-lost friend Michelle to comfort him and talk some sense into him, but Michelle Carter was far from that friend. Her response was, "What are you doing? Get back in the truck." And because of that, the judge deemed it so that she was indeed responsible for coercing Conrad that night. The saddest part about this story is Michelle was convicted for involuntary manslaughter, sentenced to only 15 months in prison, 11 of which she served. Michelle Carter is a free woman. To anyone dealing with suicidal thoughts or tendencies, you are not alone. Call 1-800-273-8255. Joran van der Sloot, the 36-year-old Dutch killer and primary suspect in the 2005 disappearance and suspected murder of Alabama student Natalie Holloway, will be extradited from Peru to face justice in the U.S. Years after the 18-year-old Holloway vanished in Aruba, van der Sloot murdered a 21-year-old Peruvian woman named Stephanie Flores. He was indicted on charges of extortion and wire fraud in a federal court in Alabama in 2010 after allegedly trying to squeeze cash out of Holloway's family in exchange for the location of her remains.
Peru officials announced late Wednesday that they would temporarily transfer custody to the U.S.
Natalie Holloway, an 18-year-old from Mountain Brook, Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham, flew to Aruba with a large group of friends ahead of their high school graduation. On May 30, 2005, some friends went out to a nightclub and met van der Sloot, also 18 at the time. He and Holloway were seen leaving the bar together. Holloway failed to make her flight home.
The Dutch national and two of his friends, brothers Sadish and Deepak Kalpo, were early suspects.
Police arrested van der Sloot but eventually released him due to a lack of evidence. Police eyed the suspects again in 2007 after uncovering new facts but wound up releasing them once more.
Holloway's remains were never found.
Stephanie Flores, 21, was a business student from a wealthy Peruvian family who crossed paths with van der Sloot on May 30, 2010, 5 years to the day after Holloway's disappearance. She wound up dead for it. Van der Sloot later claimed he killed her in a fit of anger after she learned about his connection to Holloway's disappearance. They had met earlier in her father's casino in Lima, and he beat her to death in his hotel room the following morning. In June 2010, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Alabama announced an indictment on extortion and wire fraud charges against van der Sloot for allegedly trying to sell information about the whereabouts of her body to her family. He wanted $250,000, $25,000 upfront and the rest upon the positive identification of her remains. After receiving $10,000, according to prosecutors, he led the family's lawyer John Hugh Kelly to a site he claimed Holloway's remains were buried.
He lied, according to the indictment.
The body was not there and still has not been found. In January 2012, van der Sloot pleaded guilty to Flores murder and received a 28-year prison sentence. Peru authorities this week announced they would temporarily release him from custody to face charges in the U.S. In the same week of January, a judge also granted Holloway's father's request to declare her legally dead. Dave Holloway wanted to halt payments on her health insurance and free up funds from her college savings account to use for her younger brother. In a ceremony held inside his prison in Peru, van der Sloot married Lydie Figueroa in July 2014, who was 24 years old and 7 months pregnant at the time. He told her he wanted to marry her all over again once his sentence was up, the Associated Press reported at the time. In May 2023, Holloway's mother, Beth Holloway, announced the extradition in a statement, and Peru officials later confirmed they had agreed to transfer him to U.S. custody temporarily to face justice. Almost exactly 18 years later, her perpetrator, Joran van der Sloot, has been extradited to Birmingham to answer for his crimes, she said. Gustavo Mezaquadra, Peru's ambassador to the U.S., said he hopes this action will enable a process that will help to bring peace to Mrs. Holloway and to her family, who are grieving in the same way that the Flores family in Peru is grieving for the loss of their daughter. On Friday, May 12, van der Sloot's defense lawyer Maximo Altez told Fox News Digital that he would fight extradition if his client wants him to, but he hadn't been able to speak with him yet.
Some of van der Sloot's family, he said, believes the extradition may lead to an upgrade in his circumstances.
The Calapalca prison is the worst prison in the world, Altez said of the maximum security prison where his client was being held.
Joran is in hell.
He would go to a hell that is more comfortable. Van der Sloot is one step closer to U.S. extradition as of May 2023, as Peruvian authorities move him from the remote, mountaintop Calapalca prison to another facility in Lima, closer to the airport from where he is expected to fly to American soil. He is expected to undergo a series of medical evaluations, including a COVID-19 test, prior to his transfer to U.S. custody.
Holloway would be 36 years old today. He never knew the name of the woman he killed all those years ago, back in Arizona.
He could have easily gotten away with murder, but then Walmart intervened.
In 2015, jurors found a High Point man guilty of second-degree murder in the 1997 shooting death of a 17-year-old high school senior. Matthew Edward Gibson, 22, stared straight ahead, expressionless, as a courtroom clerk polled jurors about their verdict, which followed about 19 hours of deliberations over 4 days. Judge Jerry Cash Martin sentenced Gibson to a minimum of 13 years and 1 month in prison. Gibson's attorney, Robert Winfrey, said the verdict will be appealed. Prosecutors contended that Gibson urged his friend, Marcus Keon Harris, to fire a gun near a crowd of people who were hanging out in the Five Points area of High Point after a high school football game September 6, 1997. Jacob Walker, who had started at cornerback for Andrews High School, was shot once in the head across the street from where Gibson and Harris stood. Gibson testified during the 2-week trial that he asked Harris to fire the gun because Gibson feared for his safety. Gibson had just escaped a fight with Reginald Briley, his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. In their verdict, jurors rejected Gibson's claim that he was acting in self-defense. Gibson was found guilty even though he didn't fire the gun that prosecutors believe killed Walker. Under state law, a person who aids somebody in a crime can be just as guilty as the person who committed the crime. John Jones, the jury foreman, said he believed Gibson encouraged Harris to fire the gun. That tied the two people together, Jones said after the verdict in Guilford Superior Court in High Point. Gibson maintains that authorities have the wrong man, Winfrey said. "We are totally befuddled with the verdict," Winfrey said. All he did was seek to defend himself. Winfrey had argued during the trial that there wasn't sufficient evidence to conclude that the bullet from Harris's gun killed Walker. After Harris fired his gun, about 200 people in the area scattered, and some fired their own guns, according to testimony. Deliberations were tense and stressful as several jurors flip-flopped on the question of Gibson's guilt or innocence, Jones said. One juror cried in the court hallway during deliberations last week. Jurors on Thursday requested a box of tissues. Friday, jurors said they were deadlocked, with 10 favoring guilt and 2 favoring innocence. The judge asked them to reconcile their differences. They struggled with it in themselves to come up with the truth, Jones said. All of us didn't see the same truth at first. Kathy Walker, the victim's mother, cried as she left the courtroom in the arms of 2 security guards. She did not comment. Assistant District Attorney Tom Jarrell said prosecutors were pleased with the verdict. "We feel that justice was done," he said. Harris, 23, was charged with first-degree murder. In February 2015, he entered an Alford plea to attempted second-degree murder, which means he will be treated as guilty although he does not admit guilt. Prosecutors have recommended that Harris serve a minimum of 3 years and 8 months in prison, but he has not been sentenced by a judge, according to court records. In March of that year, prosecutors offered Gibson a chance to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter. The plea agreement would have set Gibson free since he has been in jail since his arrest the day of the shooting. Gibson rejected the agreement. February 9, 2005, an Indiana brother and sister killed their mother after she refused to join them in a plot to kill their grandparents for their money, and then they went ahead and killed the elderly couple. Marion County Prosecutor Carl Britzi said Kenneth Allen Jr., 29, and his sister, Carrie Allen, 18, of Noblesville, were both charged with 3 counts of murder, along with conspiracy and robbery charges. Carrie Allen may not have directly participated in physically killing her relatives, but she acted as a lookout, the prosecutor said. The siblings were being held in Missouri, where they were arrested after their behavior during a traffic stop made police suspicious. Officers said they found bloody clothes and other evidence in the car. Under questioning by Missouri police, the two confessed Tuesday to killing their mother and grandparents in late December and early January, police said. The brother and sister allegedly told police they entombed the bodies in concrete in the grandparents' home on the east side of Indianapolis. Police began a search for the bodies of Sharon Allen, 53, of Noblesville, Leander Bradley, 91, and Betty Bradley, 75. They found what they believed to be human remains in recently poured concrete in the basement floor. Authorities then enlisted a University of Indianapolis anthropologist to examine the scene. Investigators believe the siblings killed Sharon Allen in her Noblesville apartment on or about December 30, 2004. They approached their mother, and they had a conversation about killing the grandparents.
She refused, and she was knifed to death up in Noblesville, Britzy said. They then sometime later summoned the grandmother to that same home in Noblesville and smothered her to death with a plastic bag. Britzy said investigators believe the siblings went to the Bradleys' house on January 3, 2005 and killed Leander Bradley with a hammer. Investigators believe the motive for the slayings was financial. Authorities in St. Charles County, MO, said Kenneth Allen and Carrie Allen confessed to the killings after an officer pulled their rental car over for speeding Tuesday morning on Interstate 70 just west of St. Louis. Police said the siblings were acting nervous and gave conflicting answers as to where they were going and why. An officer searched the trunk and found jewelry, credit cards, more than $1,000 in cash, bloody sheets and pillows, and identification belonging to Leander and Betty Bradley, he said. Missouri authorities contacted Indianapolis police, who searched the couple's home and found what they believed to be recently poured concrete in the basement. When Missouri authorities told Carrie Allen about the concrete, she confessed. Without even asking, she came out and said, "I'm sorry, we killed my mom and my grandparents and buried them in the basement," said Swope, who added that Kenneth Allen confessed to the slayings later. The Allen siblings were being held today in Missouri. People who live near the Bradleys' home said they haven't seen the couple in weeks. One neighbor, Doug David, said he believes he saw the grandchildren there around Christmas. The grandson got a portable electric jackhammer out of the car and took it in, David said. What I thought was the granddaughter came running back out and grabbed a couple of 5-gallon buckets with shovels in them. David and other neighbors said they saw what they considered odd activity at the house recently. The whole neighborhood did, neighbor Merlin Andrews said. We all thought we should call them, just in case, and nobody did. A beloved Georgia high school teacher went missing in 2005. More than 11 years later, 2 men are arrested, but will we ever know the truth of what happened? Tara Grinstead was a 30-year-old history teacher at the Irwin County High School in Issaquah, Georgia, when she was reported missing on October 24, 2005. Tara's best friend, Maria Woods Harbor, grew up with Tara in Hawkinsville, Georgia, about an hour north of Issaquah. She was radiant, says Maria. I mean, she had the biggest smile. She could tell you anything to make you feel better. Tara Grinstead had dreams of being a school administrator, and even someday a school principal. At the time she went missing, she was attending night school to earn a specialist degree. Tara Grinstead competed in beauty pageants to win scholarship money to further her education. In 1999, Tara Grinstead won the Miss Tifton pageant, which landed her a spot at the 1999 Miss Georgia competition. Her main goal was to win Miss Georgia, or at least to get to Miss Georgia, and she did, remembers Maria Woods Harbor. When Tara Grinstead no longer competed, she mentored other young women in the Issaquah area in the world of pageants. She just took me underneath her wing, remembers Dana Wilder. She taught me the ins and outs of interviews, hair and makeup, wardrobe. For around 6 years, Tara Grinstead dated Marcus Harper, a former Issaquah cop who joined the Army Rangers. Marcus was often overseas, and though they had broken up by the fall of 2005, friends say Tara was distraught about the relationship ending. Tara Grinstead was passionate about her job, teaching history at Irwin County High School. She was also the cheerleading coach. It was when she didn't show up at school on the morning of Monday, October 24, 2005, that friends and neighbors knew something was very wrong. When police entered Tara Grinstead's home, just down the street from downtown Issaquah, they found beauty supplies left out from when Tara had helped girls prepare for the local sweet potato pageant the Saturday before. Her bed was unmade and a bedside lamp was broken. Outside, in the front yard, investigators found a potential clue, a latex glove. It appeared that Tara may have left on her own, said former GBI Special Agent in charge Gary Rothwell. However, we had a glove, a latex glove, that we couldn't explain. So that gave us a stronger indication that something bad had happened. The latex glove was sent to a lab for testing. On the glove, lab techs identified Tara's DNA and DNA of an unknown male. For years, rumors swirled around Issaquah, wondering what happened to Tara Grinstead and who was responsible. Her dating life was closely examined, and authorities chased down leads across the country, but no one was named a suspect or even a person of interest in her disappearance. In 2017, a woman named Brooke Sheridan came forward to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, known as the GBI. She said her boyfriend, Bo Dukes, told her that he had helped his friend, Ryan Duke, cover up Grinstead's murder. The men had similar names but were not related. They had attended the Irwin County High School together, where Tara was a teacher. On February 21, 2017, Bo Dukes sat down for an interview with the GBI and told them that in October 2005, Ryan Duke came to him saying he had killed Grinstead and dumped her body in a pecan orchard that Bo Duke's family owned. Dukes said that together, he and Ryan Duke burned Grinstead's body there in the orchard over the period of 2 days. After Bo Dukes went to the GBI, Ryan Duke, was arrested and charged with Tara's murder.
Bo was arrested weeks later on charges relating to covering up the crime.
In a voluntary interview with the GBI just before his arrest, Ryan Duke said he had been stealing from Tara's purse, high on drugs, when Grinstead came up behind him and he hit her.
Ryan gave a DNA sample and it matched the unknown male DNA profile on the latex glove.
In 2019, Bo Dukes, went on trial first in Wilcox County, Georgia, for charges related to helping conceal a crime. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Ryan Duke then went on trial for murder in 2022, but his lawyers argued that he had given a false confession back in 2017, partially because he was afraid of his former friend. When Ryan took the stand, he testified that the morning after Tara went missing, Bo Dukes woke him up and admitted to killing Tara. Ryan testified that he did not know how Tara died, but that he had gone to the orchard with Bo, and he helped move her body before Bo lit the fire.
In closing arguments, Ryan's attorneys also argued that the latex glove with Ryan's DNA on it could have been planted outside Tara's house by Bo.
On May 20, 2022, a jury acquitted Ryan Duke of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault and burglary but found him guilty of concealing a death.
On May 23, Ryan Duke was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Both men still face outstanding charges in a neighboring county, related to burning Tara's body there.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, and click the bell icon to stay tuned.